Welcome to People in Transition, the podcast where we explore the moments that challenge us, change us, and ultimately shape who we become. Whether it's a career pivot, a personal reinvention, an unexpected setback, or the pursuit of something more meaningful, transition is a universal experience. But navigating change successfully requires more than a plan. It requires courage, clarity, and often a new way of seeing ourselves. Today's guest is someone who has spent her career helping people do exactly that. Marcia Wall is the founder of MW Career Services and has guided hundreds of professionals through career transitions, job searches, professional reinvention, and life-changing decisions. With more than 3 decades of experience spanning education, recruiting, workforce development, and career coaching, she brings a unique perspective on what it really takes to move forward when life or work takes an unexpected turn. Known for her joyful career journey philosophy, Marcia believes that success isn't simply about finding your next job. It's about creating a professional life that aligns with who you are becoming. Today, we'll talk about career reinvention, transferable skills, artificial intelligence, resilience, and why some of the most difficult transitions can become the most rewarding chapters of our lives. Marcia, welcome to People in Transition.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's hop right in here. Marcia, you've helped hundreds of people navigate some of the most uncertain moments in their professional lives. When someone comes to you feeling stuck or lost or afraid of what's next for them, what's the first mindset shift that often changes everything for them?
Well, this might be surprising, but when someone comes to me, very often they already have that mind shift, even if they don't realize it. It's hope, because if they come to me, there's still some hope that they feel like no matter what, that something might be able to move forward for them. Occasionally, I will work with people whose parents, these are mostly young adults who have kind of put them up to this. And sometimes those young adults really are not ready. And oftentimes I will let parents know that. What I tell my clients is that if you do not have a growth mindset, there's nothing I can do to help you to move forward. And so if people come, 99% of the time, they already have that mindset shift. And that's just enough of a purchase on the problem to allow us to move forward.
You often describe career development as and I use air quotes here, joyful journey. In a world where so many people associate career changes with stress and uncertainty, what does a joyful journey actually look like?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not rainbows and unicorns. It's not joyful every day. And sometimes when you're in the mix of it, it may not even feel joyful at the time. But what I do think is that our lives are journeys, our careers are journeys, and that if we can approach the whole process of job searching and our career development as playful, as an adventure, as a possibility to discover, then it becomes less about arriving at a destination, less about getting a particular job, and more about being open to what is coming ahead, being open to identifying the small wins, and being open to possibility, discovery, and something that better that you may not even have expected.
So you're describing that potential client or that client that you have should enjoy the journey, not just worry about the where you end up at. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, that's 100% true. What I tell people is sometimes they'll tell me, when I get my next job, I'll be happy. And I kind of look and turn my head like a dog and I say, really? Because happiness doesn't lie in one job, one person, one experience, one place. And what I say is, hopefully, the next job will be better. It'll teach you more about yourself. But in almost all cases, unless someone's getting ready for retirement, it's not the last thing they're ever going to do. And so if they have that expectation that that is the destination, then when they get there and, after a year or so they're on the job and they realize there's challenges there too, then they're going to be disappointed. But if they understand that it's just jumping from one leap pad to another, maybe in a forward direction, maybe sideways, and that there can be good in every experience, then there's less pressure to get it right and more of a permission to have fun along the way.
And when you coach people and you say you can have fun along the way, what are some of the things that you suggest that they try to kind of keep that emotion in check and keep their positive motivation going forward? Any tips, techniques that you shared and used with people?
Sometimes I actually use a gamification process. And this is not with every client and not in every situation. And even if I don't call it gamification, it's a little bit of a gamification process. So it's about try this. Why not? Could be, I don't know. So that as they're taking these next steps, they're not thinking of it in a linear fashion. It's more like trying something on. If you go to the mall, if anyone goes to the mall anymore, and you try on different clothes, it's like prototyping. It's just an experimentation, trying to find out what might come next. Does that make sense?
Got it. Very good. Marcia, across all the people you've worked with in all types of walks of life, teachers and career changers and individuals facing health challenges and professionals at every stage of their career, what are the universal struggles that seems to show up again and again in these people?
I think almost every client I have ever worked with has some level of imposter syndrome. That's just a fancy name for lack of confidence, right? This feeling that like nobody wants me, I don't know how to move forward, I'm not good enough, I'm not ready for this job. They're not going to believe me if I tell them that I'm able to do this job. I think that is universal. I think the other thing that's universal is that people don't recognize their transferable skills or how to speak about their transferable skills. Meaning, if they've done one thing in one arena, they often don't have the capacity to explain that in another arena. I would think the third thing is that most people have difficulty networking and most people have difficulty interviewing. Not everybody, but I would say the majority of folks. So again, what I tell people is you don't have to become a master networker overnight. You don't have to ace the interview. But if you work with me and you're open to doing things a little bit different, if you can get a little bit better at networking in a way that feels comfortable for you, if you can improve your interview skills and get a little bit more confidence, that's enough to be able to move forward.
Let's focus in on that imposter syndrome for just a moment. Let's say that one of your clients is displaying that. What do you do to help them deal with that and get over it?
Data. I look at the data with them. And by that, I mean, we put on like a T chart. And on the left-hand side, we will put all the reasons, all the evidence that they've already accomplished things and can accomplish things in the future. So it might be a list of a job, it might be a list of a personal accomplishment, it might be even something like their faith if they're a person of faith. And then on the right side, I dare them to put down the reasons that they won't succeed. And very often they can't put anything down, or maybe one thing down. When we compare the charts, the two sides of the chart, the data tell the story. And as we know in an era of big data, right, that if you look at the data, it will tell you what you need to know.
Marcia, what's the biggest mistake people make when they decide it's time for a career change? And I think as important, how do we tell our listeners how they might be able to avoid that mistake?
I think one of the big mistakes is that they wait too late. Simply, people wait until there's a crisis or a problem to begin to think about making a career change. And the reason that that's difficult, it's like trying to lose 10 pounds before your wedding day. You wait to the last minute, something's not likely to get done. I liken career development to an Olympian who's running a race in track and field, right? People don't succeed in those races or even get to the Olympics in the first place because they waited to the last minute to train. Big portion of my work is really focused on the overall career journey, not about landing that next job. So, what I tell people is our work is really about career management. I want to help you to be able to be your own career change agent over a lifetime. And so when I'm working with them, I help them to develop the habits that will not only allow them to get the next job, but the job after. And hopefully they will not wait till a moment of crisis to begin to thinking about their next steps.
Do many people really think about their career over the lifetime, or do they just look at that next job and what it means from a paycheck standpoint, what it means from a maybe an enjoyment standpoint, maybe some growth standpoint, but do they really look at their life career?
Maybe most times not initially. I do think that there are a number of people that I work with who really get it, that the mindset shift, the perspective shift really does change for things down the road. But having said that, I also tell my clients that the greatest impact of coaching you're not going to see immediately. Yes, you may get that job. You may be able to move forward in the short term. Better pay, better enjoyment, better benefits, better options for your family. But I tell them, I guarantee you, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're going to look back on the work that we did together and you're going to realize something that you had never realized before. So they may not, even if they say they get it and that they're adopting that mindset, they may not initially do so. But over time, people have reported to me, now I get it. Now it makes sense. I'm so glad that I did that work with you because not only did I get the job, but I was able to have a better career overall.
Marcia, you touched on this a little bit earlier, and I want to spend a little bit more time on it. Many talented people underestimate their own value, their own worth. How can someone uncover their transferable skills and tell a compelling story about those skills to a potential employer?
Right. Those are really two separate questions, right? The first question is how do they identify those transferable skills? And there's many ways to do that. Start looking at your resume. What are the accomplishments and the action verbs that you already have on there? Secondly, we'll talk through what kind of work they've done, and I'm able to reveal some things to them. I also think that assessments can be really valuable tools. They're not diagnostics or they're not diagnostic in nature, but taking an assessment may be able to help you to uncover things you haven't seen before. But one of the major things that I do with my clients is I give them an exercise called the best self-reflected exercise. And it's about 20 different questions that you ask people, coworkers, friends, former professors, former bosses, anyone whom you can really trust. And the questions are essentially about what do you think my biggest strengths are? What do you think I do really well? How did I make you feel when I did XYZ? Because people often have a myopic perspective, right? They're in their heads about everything. You really need to talk to other people and get other people's perspectives to get a perspective you have never considered before. And it is amazing the transformation and the confidence that is increased when people do that last exercise.
You mentioned other assessments, and I really like this one that you've created, but are there other ones that are maybe not quite as expensive or as cumbersome to use to take to help you understand yourself and those skills?
Yes, there's a lot of free ones out there, but there's two paid ones that are really low cost that I really believe in. One is called Skill Scan. It's relatively short. I think the cost is about $15.95. And people go in and answer a variety of questions. And they don't just get a list of skills, they also get a list of jobs that may be appropriate for that. The skills are ranked so that people can see what their greatest strengths are. The skills that maybe aren't at the top, they are given suggestions for how to develop those skills, how to be curious about those skills. I think it's maybe like a 10-page report. It's really comprehensive. And I would say if I were to only give one assessment to my clients, that would be the one that I would give. The other one, and this goes, this has been around so long, is the Gallup Strengths Finder. The basic one only costs about $25, and it allows you to see what your top 5 strengths are and how you might use those strengths, not only in the workplace, but in your personal life as well. Because what I want people to do is to get a well-rounded perspective of who they are and then use that knowledge to be able to tell their own story. There's other ones out there like the O Net Interest Profiler. MBTI, which I think has its uses, but Skill Scan and Gallup Strengths are my go-to.
Marcia, you've sat on both sides of the hiring table as a recruiter and as a career coach, and maybe sometime even as a candidate. What do you see most job seekers still get wrong if they're involved with today's hiring process?
It's a great question. And I would have to say they think it's about them, right? They think that the job search is about them in terms of what they want, that someone should take a chance on them, that if they get rejected, it's a personal matter, right? That it's somehow reflective of who they are or what faults that they have. And the job search is really about the employer. What does the employer need? What is the employer looking for? How can job seekers communicate their story in a way that allows the job seeker to feel really confident about bringing that person on? And I think if people can get out of their head that they are selling themselves and take on the mentality that their job is to show how they can contribute to collective success, then they understand that this whole process is about telling a story to be able to make a connection for the employer. That's the biggest one. The job search is not about you, it's about the employer and what they need, and can you show that you can provide what they need?
I hear today so much angst in people's conversations, voices around applicant tracking systems. Oh, they're rigged against me. It's just a machine, so they don't really get the feel of who I am. All of those kind of stories. Can you tell us what's the facts, what's the fiction, and what actually helps a candidate get noticed, even when the employer uses that applicant tracking system?
Sure. And I'm glad you said applicant tracking systems because there's not one ATS. There are hundreds of applicant tracking systems and they all operate slightly differently. I've used applicant tracking systems and they are not the bugaboo that people think they are. The key word in applicant tracking system is tracking. It's really a digital file cabinet that allows recruiters to organize the many, many resumes that they get. You know, the idea that somehow a machine or a robot is judging you from the get-go and is kicking out if you don't meet certain keywords is largely false. I say that as having been a recruiter, a hiring manager, as well as the fact that I still work really closely with recruiters and get accurate information. I think what people need to understand is that recruiters are super busy and they are reviewing resumes at a rapid pace. I once reviewed 200 resumes in a 4 hour period. And most recruiters will tell you they read every single resume that crosses their desk. So when you're writing a resume, you absolutely need to write it for a human being in mind. And if you can do that, that is where you're going to make the connection. Now, having said that, if a recruiter gets 50 good resumes right off the bat, they may not look at the other 200 that came in because their priority is to fill a role and to fill it quickly to meet the needs of their employer. So applying early really helps, but ultimately it's about writing a good resume. It's about having a good LinkedIn profile. It's about visibility and it's about networking.
Marcia, you've spent years helping people rebuild themselves after rejection and burnout and layoffs and all kinds of major life disruptions. Can you tell us what's the difference between people who remain stuck in that quagmire of feeling sorry for themselves and not moving forward versus those who find a way to move forward and go on with their lives and their career?
That's a great question. I would say again, it comes back to the data. And I don't mean that, I'm keeping a running list of things and just tell people to look at this list and somehow that's magically going to make you feel better. But when I really talk to people and we do look at their transferable skills, we do look at what they've accomplished in the past. I show them how other people have done it. And quite frankly, I tell them about my own career trauma, right? Lots of rejection. There were times when I was let go or when I was laid off. I really normalize quote unquote failure, that it's not failure, it's just part of the process. And when they can see that other human beings have gone through the same thing and that those people were able to move forward, that hope that they came in with becomes increased confidence. And then by engaging in an iterative process, right, trying things out, seeing what works, listening to podcasts, volunteering, even taking on side jobs, and then looking at all of that experience as pieces of a puzzle, they're able to see, like, yeah, I may not be jumping to my dream job right away, but I am able to move forward. I'm able to recognize what is going on, and I have control of the situation, insofar as any of us has control on anything. But it's action that leads to success. It's not success that leads to action.
We've touched on this before, the whole notion of career being mapped out. Do you believe successful careers are planned or are they discovered along the way?
Almost everyone is going to plan their career out. And there's no problem with doing that. I mean, I did that to a large extent. I went to graduate school. I was going to teach English at the college level, and I did. And I thought that would be my final destination. But what happens is that so many things happen to us, right? We may get laid off. We may find another interest. Someone may offer us a job. We might have, I survived Hurricane Katrina. You might have a natural disaster that completely upends your career. We saw that COVID impacted so many people. People may go through illnesses, and there may be wonderful things that happen that they never planned on. And so all of those things are kind of like a pinball machine. But the difference between a career journey and being a ball in a pinball machine is that if you're the human being, you're able to react on your own. Even if things happen to you, you have the self knowledge, you have an understanding, hopefully, of the career development process and understand how successful job searches are made so that when something happens to you, you are able to pivot with some kind of intention. And I think that's really where the joy comes in. It's in that discovery. It is in the, oh my gosh, I didn't know what that's going to happen, but it led me to something even better, or it taught me something new about myself. And so there's a part of the adventure that I did not anticipate, and I'm looking forward to it.
You know, the one thing that I hear back from my listeners is that they really enjoy and get a great deal out of the stories that my guests have experienced in their work life. What are some of the most surprising career reinventions that you've witnessed? And what do you think my listeners can learn from those reinvention stories?
I will say one, and this is not about someone coming to arrive at a new job. I worked with a woman who had lived in another country. She had immigrated here, and in her home country, she had been imprisoned, she had been violated, she had been burned, and she had been tortured. And she came to this country, got into a domestic violence situation, and she absolutely could not see a way forward. I worked along with a team of my volunteer job coaches when I was working at an institution. And it took everything that we had and it took everything she had to be able to believe that she could move her life forward. And through a combination of career coaching and confidence building, she was able to get back to her work as an architect. I'm tearing up a little bit over here because if that person can do that, I believe that anyone else should be able to move forward. The other one that is a little bit surprising is I had a client who was a private investigator. At some point realized she didn't want to do that anymore. And we worked together to discover her passions and her transferable skills. And she became a baker. And she's been a baker now for, I think, 5, 6, 7 years. And she's a home baker. She has this great business. And she likes to say that she bakes people happy. So, what I like to remind people is that what you do next doesn't necessarily have to do anything with what you did before. But if you really understand yourself, you're going to be able to look at the through line and see no matter what you did, in some way you were doing the same thing. And what she said was, as a private investigator, I was really working with people to make their lives better in some kind of way. And she's doing the same thing as a baker. So the thread is still there, even if the jobs look drastically different.
So that is how you coach then, let's pick on a couple of different areas, teachers or ex-military people, they need to understand themselves and what it is, the skills that they have developed in those professions, and explain to a potential employer how that can be used in this new field. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, but I would say it's even more fundamental to that. Whether people realize it or not, they have a vision and they have a mission. It wasn't until my 40s, I'll be 56 in September. It wasn't till I was in my 40s that I was able to articulate what my vision was. And my vision is a world transformed. I've been a kindergarten teacher, a photographer, stand-up comedian. Obviously, I've been a career coach and resume writer and recruiter and many other things that I'm not listing here. And what I was able to ascertain when I looked back is that all of those situations, I was helping people to have a transformative experience. Except for the comedian job, that was a transformative experience because if I get you to laugh, you're having a different experience than when you came in. But I would say in all of those other situations, it wasn't about getting a job. It wasn't about taking a photograph. It wasn't about kindergartners learning their ABCs. It was about helping people to see themselves in a new way, to believe in themselves, and that able them to move their lives forward in another way. So when people are looking back on their careers, they should ask the question, what's the same thing I've been doing over and over and over again, no matter which context in which I'm doing it? And if they can answer that question, then it becomes much easier to move forward because they understand whatever job they're going to go into next, they're going to be doing it in a different way. And when they're speaking to employers, they're able to speak about that through line so that it doesn't look like, oh, I was a baker. Oh, I was, radio talk show host. Oh, I was an accountant. And that may look jumbled to an employer, but if you can tell the through line of your story, then the employer can understand it too. And they can understand that you're not just going to the next job, you're going to the next evolution of your career. And they like to hear that.
Marcia, artificial intelligence is reshaping the workplace. How do you coach professionals to use AI as a powerful career tool without losing the human qualities that make them so valuable?
You hit on the word tool. Just like we would use a dictionary or read a newspaper or do some research, it's just a tool. So I think if people go in with that understanding to begin with, then they don't become reliant on it. I think anytime we turn over the stewardship of our own career to somebody else or to a tool, that's where things get really difficult. I think the other thing is to realize that it has its limitations. And I think if you use it enough and if you follow the right people and you really listen to what's being said, you're going to understand that. Here's the thing, you don't drive a car without someone training you on how to do that. In most cases, when you rode a bicycle for the first time, someone is training you on how to do that. So if people jump into Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT or any of these are other large language learning models without getting some expert training on it, that is where the pitfall is going to be. So you need to learn how to use it, get some advice, work with a career coach, look at some videos. And once you understand how to use it, then it becomes a tool that can help you. If you're using it to do the work for you, it's going to fail you every single time.
Marcia, our closing comment and question here is, let's imagine a listener is standing at the edge of a major transition, uncertainty about the future, questioning their abilities, and wondering whether to take that leap. What do you hope they remember about themselves, about what's possible when this conversation ends for themselves?
That they're capable, right? They can look back and see that they've already accomplished great things in their lives, even if the client is 23 or even if they're in college and they're looking for their next major. They need to understand that they've already succeeded. And that is enough evidence to be able to move forward. If you've done it before, you can do it again. I think the other thing is that I want them to understand that they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to ace the interview. They don't have to find the perfect career. It needs to be good enough, and they need to be able to move forward with the understanding that something's going to work out. That old Nike slogan, just do it. At some point in this process, they have to move forward and have faith that they're good enough, that, things have worked out before, and that there is a future for them that is better than the one they have now.
Marcia, thank you so much. And I hope that our conversation for our listeners helped fire you up and gave you the push to take bold steps in your own career journey. If you're ready to make the next move, your best one yet, I know that Marcia and I would be honored to help you through coaching or just having a discussion. Let's start building that future you've been dreaming about. Your next chapter is waiting. So let's make it happen. Marcia, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks.